On my 68th birthday, I received a gift that unsettled me more than it should have. There was no card, no sender's name, just 2 words scrawled across a plain white slip. Happy birthday. That handwriting was one I knew by heart, though I hadn't seen it in 3 years. It belonged to Ethan, the son I had raised for 2 decades, the boy I thought would always carry my name forward. When I tore open the box, I found a limited edition bottle of whiskey, the kind designed less for drinking than for display. Deep green label, gold lettering, a wax seal that begged to be cracked open with ceremony. The light from the kitchen window caught the amber liquid in a way that made it look alive, fire captured in glass. It would have been a beautiful gift for another man, but Ethan had either forgotten or chosen to ignore the fact that I had given up drinking after my heart attack. He had been standing right there when the doctor listed every food and drink I had to cut from my life if I wanted to see 70. Yet here it was, a bottle worth more than anything he'd ever spent on me before, arriving after 3 years of silence. Instead of opening it, I slid it across the table and thought of Robert Carson, Ethan's father-in-law. Robert had always been generous in ways Ethan never was, the kind of man who would show up at your door with a hammer before you had time to ask. 2 summers back, after a storm stripped half the shingles from my roof, Robert was already on a ladder at 8 in the morning, hammer swinging, sawdust clinging to his boots, not waiting to be asked. If anyone deserved something nice, it was him. By mid-afternoon, the bottle was buckled into the passenger seat of my old Chevy. Driving out along County Road 6 with the October light turning fields of soy stubble gold, I felt uneasy, though I couldn't say why. Robert's house stood tall on a rise, the white porch wrapping around it like something from a postcard. He opened the door before I knocked, his flannel sleeves rolled up, his eyes locking immediately on the whiskey. "Frank, what's this?" he asked, eyebrows climbing. "From Ethan," I said simply. His face tightened in surprise. "Ethan sent you this?" I nodded. "Thought you might enjoy it more than I would." He cradled the bottle like it was delicate. "This is something, Frank, the kind of bottle you save for a special night." "Then make tonight special," I told him, and I meant it. Watching him grin, seeing appreciation where my son had sent only coldness, felt good. Driving back, though, unease gnawed at me. Ethan had never spent money without a reason. As a boy, he'd borrow gas cash and never pay it back. So why a gift so extravagant, and why now? I shoved the thought aside, telling myself not everything needs an explanation, though I didn't believe it. That night I cooked a pot roast, the smell of onions and carrots filling a house that felt far too large without Linda in it. I was washing dishes when the landline rang. Few people ever called it anymore. "Hello, Dad," came Ethan's voice, smooth and casual, like we hadn't spent years apart. "Happy birthday," he added, a second too late. My grip tightened on the receiver. "You got my gift?" I did. "Well, what do you think?" "It's a nice bottle," I said flatly. "Did you try it yet?" There was a sharper edge in his tone now, subtle but there. "No, I gave it to Robert." Silence. Long, heavy, deliberate silence. "You gave it to Robert?" "That's right." A slow exhale, measured, controlled. "Huh," he said, and then the line went dead. I stood in the kitchen, the clock ticking louder than it ever had. A knot tightening in my gut. The way he asked about that whiskey had weight to it, a kind of meaning I couldn't pin down but couldn't shake. The next morning, Linda Carson called. Her voice was taut, trembling. "Frank, it's Robert." "He collapsed this morning. They think it might be poisoning." The word clanged in my ears like metal. Poisoning. He had been fine the night before, she said, until after dinner, when they'd both had a single glass from the bottle I had given him. Now he was in a hospital bed, monitors struggling to hold his heart steady. I didn't answer her questions, but my eyes went to the counter where the whiskey had sat, and then to the trash bin where something white caught my eye. A small plastic vial, like the kind vitamins come in, no label, faint dust inside. My hands shook as I pulled out the mason jar from the fridge, half a glass of leftover whiskey I hadn't even remembered saving. Robert had poured it, maybe for a taste. Now it sat there like evidence. I called Gary, an old army buddy who ran a small veterinary lab on the edge of town. He owed me a favor. That night I drove over, the mason jar wrapped in paper, and handed it to him with one request. "Tell me what's in it, quietly." The next day, just past noon, Gary called back. His voice was grim. "Frank, you're not going to like this. The whiskey's laced with white snake root. In the right dose, it stops the heart." My chest went hollow. Robert had drunk it, I hadn't. "Then you may have just dodged a bullet," Gary said softly. When he hung up, I stared at the walls of my empty house. The silence was too thick, too knowing. I used to think the worst sound in the world was a phone ringing in the dead of night. Turns out, there's something worse. A phone call you already know will confirm your darkest suspicion. Ethan hadn't just sent me a gift. He had sent me a message. I went straight to the hospital. Robert lay pale and weak, his breaths shallow, Linda gripping the rail of his bed like if she let go, he'd float away. The doctor spoke in rehearsed tones about heart rhythms and toxins, but it was clear. They suspected poison. Linda looked at me with searching eyes. "Frank, that bottle you brought. He said it was the finest whiskey he ever tasted. He wanted to save the rest." I clenched my jaw. Tell the doctors it was new, unopened, and tell them I still have a small sample from the same bottle. She reached for my hand, stopped halfway, and clutched the rail again. "Frank, what is this? What do you think?" "I don't know," I said, which was half a lie, but I intended to find out. When I returned home, I went to check the trash bin. The plastic vial I had seen the day before was gone. The bag had been lifted, put back slightly wrong. Someone had been in my house. The deadbolt was set, the windows latched. No signs of entry, but I could feel it, the kind of feeling you get when something familiar has been disturbed in a way no one else would notice. Panic would have been easy, but panic is loud, and loud gets you killed. Instead, I made coffee, sat at the table, and drew 2 columns on a yellow legal pad. What I know, what I can prove. Under what I know, I wrote, Ethan sent the bottle. Ethan asked if I'd tried it. Ethan's tone changed when I told him I gave it to Robert. Gary's test confirmed poison. The vial is missing. Under what I can prove, I had far less. Gary's lab results, the leftover whiskey in the mason jar, Ethan's phone call, if memory held. Between the 2 columns yawned a gap as wide as the silence between me and my son. I picked up my old digital recorder, slid it into my jacket pocket, and felt the weight against my chest like armor. By noon, I was at Ethan's doorstep. His house looked like every other in his development, neat siding, manicured lawn, not a leaf out of place. His truck gleamed in the driveway, newer and shinier than mine ever was. He opened the door with a face that shifted too quickly. First surprise, then calculation, then something he wanted me to believe was warmth. "Dad," he said smoothly, "this is unexpected." "Is it?" I asked, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. The house smelled like lemon cleaner, sterile and staged. He mentioned Robert, called it a virus, like he'd already rehearsed the line. I said nothing, only studied him. Then I asked, "Did you try the bottle you sent me?" His laugh was light, too practiced. "The point was for you to enjoy it. You know I don't drink anymore." He shrugged. "People change." I glanced at the counter. 3 unopened bottles stood neatly lined up. None matched the one he had sent me, none touched. I leaned closer. "Funny thing," I said slowly, feeling the recorder press steady against my chest. "Robert said his favorite pour was from the middle shelf, the single malt." Ethan blinked, just once. A blink a fraction too slow, betraying recognition. My heart beat harder. "Strange," I added. "I never told you where I put that bottle." For half a second his body went still, like a predator hearing a twig snap in the brush. Then he forced a crooked smile and shook his head with a little laugh. "You must have. You get chatty when you're sentimental." "I didn't," I said, my eyes locked on his. He looked away first, grabbing a dish towel and drying an already clean glass. "Dad," he murmured, not looking at me. "You always overthink. You're always trying to fix things no one asked you to fix." I stepped closer, my voice low, deliberate. "You sent me a bottle worth $500. I can't drink it, and Robert almost died because of it. Tell me, Ethan, what exactly were you trying to fix?" For a long moment, Ethan didn't answer my question. He stood there with that glass in his hand, spinning it like a poker chip, buying time. His silence was louder than words, and it told me more than I wanted to know. When he finally spoke, his tone was even, too even. "You think I'd hurt Robert? That I'd hurt you?" I didn't blink. "I don't think, Ethan. I know what Gary found in that whiskey, and I know you were the only one who sent it." His jaw tightened just barely, a muscle twitching under the skin. Then he chuckled, low and hollow. "You always needed someone to blame. Mom, me, anyone but yourself. You think you were a good father, Frank? You think those years you spent working, drinking, shouting, didn't leave scars?" The words hit hard, but they weren't lies. They were weapons sharpened on truths I'd spent years trying not to look at. But I wasn't here for confession. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. "You didn't answer the question. Why send me that bottle?" This time he didn't laugh. He set the glass down, carefully, as if sudden movement might shatter more than crystal. "Because it should have been you," he said quietly. "Not Robert." The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. His words weren't shouted, weren't spit out in anger. They were calm, steady, almost mournful. He meant them. He wanted me dead. For a moment, the house went silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. I stared at my son, the boy I'd once taught to ride a bike, whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, whose trophies I'd clapped for. And here he stood, a grown man, telling me he'd tried to poison me. I forced myself to breathe. "Why, Ethan?" His eyes hardened. "Because you ruined everything. You drank when Mom needed you sober. You gambled when I needed tuition. You shouted when I needed guidance. Every mistake I ever made traces back to you. And you walk around like you've paid your dues, like time excuses everything." I swallowed, my throat dry as ash. "So killing me fixes that?" "No," he said flatly, "but it evens the score." I glanced toward the counter where my recorder sat hidden in my jacket pocket, still running, capturing every word, a small thread of hope in a room thick with dread. "Ethan," I said, choosing my words like stepping stones across a river. "Robert didn't deserve this. He was a good man." "Robert was always there for you," Ethan snapped, the mask finally slipping. His voice cracked with venom. "More than I ever was. You treated him like the son you wanted, not the one you had. Don't pretend otherwise." And suddenly, it all clicked. The jealousy, the timing, the target. He hadn't just wanted me dead. He wanted Robert out of the picture too. Robert, the dependable son-in-law, the man Ethan's own wife trusted more than him. Robert had been a mirror, showing Ethan everything he wasn't, and Ethan hated him for it. The truth was uglier than poison. I steadied myself. "You're wrong. I never wanted anyone but you." For the first time, he faltered. A flicker in his eyes, doubt breaking through rage. But it was gone as quickly as it came. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Doesn't matter. You ruined your chance. And now you're going to pay for it." I saw his hand move. Fast. Too fast. A flash of metal, small but sharp, a folding knife snapping open. My heart lurched, but my body remembered old instincts. I grabbed the nearest thing, a heavy glass ashtray from the counter, and swung. It connected with a crack that echoed through the kitchen. He stumbled back, the knife clattering to the floor. For a moment I thought he'd lunge again, but he didn't. He crumpled against the cabinets, clutching his head, dazed. I stood over him, chest heaving, my hands shaking around the ashtray, my son, my only son, and here I was, standing over him like an enemy. I bent, picked up the knife, and slid it across the floor out of reach. My voice shook when I spoke. "It ends here, Ethan. No more running, no more silence, no more poison. It ends." His eyes lifted to mine, and for just a second I saw the boy he used to be, the boy who once begged me to play catch, who laughed so hard he fell in the grass. And then it was gone, replaced by something harder, something hollowed out by years of resentment. "You should have died," he whispered. I stepped back, pulled the recorder from my pocket, and set it on the counter between us. The red light blinked steady. His eyes widened, and for the first time that night, fear crossed his face. By the time the sheriff's cruiser pulled up outside, Ethan was silent, sitting with his head in his hands. He didn't resist, didn't argue. He just let them take him, the way a man might let the tide pull him out to sea. The house was quiet again after they left, but it wasn't the same silence as before. It wasn't heavy with dread. It was heavy with loss. The kind of loss you can't patch with apologies, the kind that lingers long after the echo fades. I sat at the table staring at the recorder, the knife, the ghost of the whiskey bottle, and I thought about choices, about how every argument, every mistake, every silence had stacked up, one on top of the other, until they built a wall I couldn't tear down. I thought about how I'd wanted reconciliation, and how instead I'd found the truth. That sometimes love can rot into something unrecognizable. Robert survived. The doctor said he'd be weak for a while, but he'd live. For that I was grateful. But Ethan was gone, even if he was still breathing. The boy I raised had turned into a man I didn't recognize, and the man I didn't recognize had tried to kill me. On my 68th birthday, I received a gift, not a bottle of whiskey, not even a chance to drink. The real gift was clarity. Clarity that forgiveness has limits, that silence can grow teeth, and that sometimes the people you love most can become the ones you fear the deepest. And so I ask you this, if someone in your life is slipping away, if anger and pride have already dug a canyon between you, are you sure you want to wait another year, another birthday, another silence before you reach out? because you never know what shape that silence will take when it finally breaks. Sometimes it comes with a hug, and sometimes it comes wrapped in poison,